All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for the workshop section of today. This will be an interactive workshop, so it's going to be less of me talking and more of you all talking to one another. But I'll just kick it off and set the stage for the session today. So the first part, I'm just going to give you a little bit of my story or my career journey in the sustainability or environmental sector. And then we'll go to you, so shaping your impact, both from an individual, but really from the business lens, since the conference today is focused on industry and how business can take action. So we'll talk about these 8 areas. These are the 8 areas when we're working with corporate clients. We step them through this 8-step process, and everyone is different. So we've seen massive clients come to us and they haven't taken the first step. We've seen smaller businesses who have done everything except for reporting, number 7 and number 8. And so we'll walk through what these 8 steps are, and then we'll get you into groups and start the discussion there. So a little bit about my journey. I have been in the environmental consulting space for 15 plus years. I was with another environmental consulting firm that heavily focused on ports and reducing emissions from shipping and goods movement, and decided in 2008 that I wanted to go off on my own in the year of the recession and start my own firm called 3 Squares Inc. And the 3 squares, the logo, stand for social, environmental, economic. So the idea is that everything that we do balances all 3 pillars. Shortly after I started the business, I was tapped to serve as the first director of sustainability for the Democratic National Convention, which was in Denver in 2008. And what that meant is a convention back then was a $100 million event. They had never had a sustainability strategy for that type of event. There weren't any industry standards. And so it was pretty blue ocean, or it was up to me to create the strategy and go as far as I could with the resources that I had. The good news is that Denver convention in 2008 became the case study for the event industry in how to green a large-scale or city-wide event. It also means that a standard was developed. I took part within the events industry to develop a standard similar to the LEED Green Building Standard, but for events, looking at events as temporary builds. And when you think about an event the size of a convention, $100 million, or the Olympics, $5 to $15 billion, if you can put a lens over that spend, you can have a tremendous impact. I've since then been in the same role for the convention in 2012, in 2016, and now I'm Director of Sustainability for Milwaukee 2020. Back in 2010, though, started my journey with Vice President Al Gore in Nashville. I was trained as a climate leader. And that means that I'm trained to give that piece of the slideshow that you saw earlier, but I also started working with the organization as the sustainability advisor for all of their events and the organization all over the world. In 2012, 3 Squares Inc. became the first firm in the US, one of the first 5 in the world, to get certified to that standard that I mentioned, ISO 2012-1. And now we advise the Olympics and other events all over the world in terms of how to get certified. Through this journey, it's never been boring. We've implemented on all 7 continents. Our materials have been translated into 13 languages. And I give this talk all around the world. And when I say this line, our materials have been translated into 13 languages, I always say from Icelandic to Urdu. I've never said that in Iceland. So yes, we have had projects where we had to translate to Icelandic because the project was here in Iceland. This is my first time being here, so it's great to be here. And then 2 years ago now, 2018, I was tapped to serve as Director of Sustainability for the Global Climate Action Summit, which was a big international summit for businesses, for non-state actors. It was held in San Francisco, but we worked with government agencies all around the world. Government in Norway was a huge partner to put on that conference. And on the corporate side, we do work with government agencies and nonprofits, but on the corporate side, we work with some of the giants of today. So Nike, Lamborghini, Honda, Louis Vuitton, United Nations, et cetera. And I say that not to say like, wow, I say that because we are a small business. So I'm proudly a certified small business and certified women-owned business. But we have been able to both build this reputation in our 12th year now, and we are sought out by these corporate giants because of our work in this space. The types of projects we work on can range from actually developing the playbooks that are used for these large corporations all across their events, all across their retail locations, or their pop-ups. It could also mean developing global strategies as brands decide to move and expand to new territories. This is a vineyard that we've worked with in Chile, Argentina, and the US. And then on the event side, we still have a lot of large events. This is the Los Angeles Marathon. When you think of a marathon, this one has 26,000 racers, plus their fans, right? So their family members who come to cheer them on. Think about waste, think about the transportation footprint, et cetera. The Al Gore trainings that I mentioned, we've done them from 2010 to 2020, so 10 years now, all over the world. I list the cities here because what I wanted to show you is that when we also implement the sustainability strategy for those events, in some of these cities, we're starting at zero. There's zero infrastructure for recycling. Definitely finding commercial compost facilities is a challenge in a lot of these cities. And we have strong local sourcing commitments. All of our events are 100% vegetarian with vegan options. So as you can imagine, different challenges in different cities, but we're always able to maintain our standard. Okay, so now that's about me. Let's look at you. So when we think about individuals, research shows that individuals, adults, make around 35,000 decisions every single day. Children make around between 3,000 and 6,000, so you can see why we're so tired, right? We have a lot of decisions. But when you think about those decisions, some are micro, and you just do them, your subconscious does them, like I just picked up that because I was thirsty. Some are major, like where to live, what to wear, what to drive. Do you drive? Do you walk? Do you bike to get to where you're going? What to eat? Where to work? Do you work at an organization because they're aligned with your personal values, or are you a change maker and you pick an organization that has zero commitment to sustainability or your personal values, but you want to be the change from within? What to support, what to volunteer for, what to donate to, where to shop, what to say, excuse me, and what to post online, which is also really important. Now we're talking to strangers online via social media. How can you influence them? This tweet, which the plastics recycling speaker mentioned, it came out during Davos a couple years ago, 2016, and it was a report by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and the Davos social media team of the WEF pushed it out. By 2050, oceans are expected to contain more plastics than fish by weight. This tweet was the highest retweeted and shared tweet out of any tweet during any Davos. But what was ironic was back in 2016, plastics wasn't on the agenda. So what that told the WEF was, we're out of touch, right? So why are our world leaders and business leaders here talking about all of these important topics, but the one thing that got the attention of the masses related to plastics in the ocean wasn't even on the agenda? And the reason why it's important is because, just like I gave the example about McDonald's and the tweeting about plastic straws, customers and your stakeholders are paying attention, and if you're not bringing those important topics to the board meetings and to your own agendas within your companies, you'll be left behind, right? What we saw with this plastics debate is that the push from the consumers actually caused a ripple effect across major brands. This is a grocery store chain that's big in the US, and it says across the bottom there, Trader Joe's was facing mounting criticism for an overuse of packaging. And so they said they made a commitment to phase out plastic packaging. New Zealand added some humor to it, and they came out, a PR company. Like I said, we need more of these creative ideas in messaging. They said, let's do food in the nude. Why do you need a plastic wrap around our fruit and our produce and our vegetables? It's not necessary. Let's do a food in the nude campaign and just say people can buy their fruit and produce without it being wrapped in plastic. And people loved that campaign. Okay, so when we look at what you can do as a company, the first step in the 8-step process is leadership commitment. Without leadership commitment, even if you have the most committed employees and customers who really want you to make change, if the C-suite and the board does not see the value and the importance of this change, it will not happen. And so I always like to reference a couple of key leaders. The one I'm going to focus on today, Paul Pullman of Unilever, he made a name for himself. He's now left Unilever and he has a business called, a new organization called Imagine, focused on purpose-driven businesses. But what he said here is that we've known about these challenges, right? And that business has a role to play in addressing them. Business needs to be part of the solution, not the problem. We cannot be bystanders. So he came out with a pretty bold statement saying that he was going to change a consumer package, a CPG brand, and he was going to do it so that the business was aligned with purpose. What that means when a leader makes a statement like that is it signals to the rest of the company that this is important and that this matters. How you then formalize that commitment is embedding the sustainability piece or the CSR piece into your mission, and that's really important. One of the things to look at, I ask you all to do this, is your own website, right? Is that commitment clear on your website, or do you have to search to about, and then about, and then about, and about, to get to the 5th link to read about your commitment? That signals to both your employees and all of your stakeholders that it's not that important and some people are like nodding their head, realizing like, yeah, it's actually really, really hard to find that commitment. What we've seen with some major brands is that they've woven this commitment into their mission. In some cases, they have a one-line mission statement and it's front and center. This is Adidas. It's clear that Adidas is saying we're a global organization, we embrace creativity and diversity, and we are environmentally responsible. Patagonia, our reason for being. Build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. I mean, that's pretty core to their reason for being. Starbucks, shared planet, our commitment to do business in ways that are good for people and the planet. Tata Group out of India, our practice of returning to society what we earn evokes trust among consumers, employees, shareholders, and the community. Apple. So the word environmental is present in 7 of the 8 guiding principles for Apple. So Apple Computer is committed to protecting the environment, health, and safety of our employees, customers, and the global communities where we operate. So that's about mission. Now, after you've baked your leadership commitment in, your mission statements locked in, then we start to look at, have you really assigned staffing and resources to this commitment? Or is it something that's talked about in the C-suite or the board level, in your mission on your website, but when you look around the company, no one's responsible for it? That's a challenge that we see. And this role of Chief Sustainability Officer is a fairly new position. So even these large companies didn't have anyone in that role 10 years ago, some 5 years ago. A lot of these companies, they're making announcements like so-and-so hired their first Chief Sustainability Officer. So the industry is, I would say, at its nascent stage, toddler stage, just beginning to walk. This is an org chart that I pulled from a major company just as an example to show you how they've woven in their sustainability commitment. And they've also attached a sustainability governance committee. So realizing that, when you look at the makeup of boards, corporate boards, you're looking at risk. You always have someone in there who's focused on, and in the past it was like HR risk and those types of things. Now we're talking about ESG risk or climate risk. I think one of the speakers, I think it was Pablo, mentioned a bottling company, beer. Well, those companies that manufacture soda, beer, beverages, et cetera, they've grouped together and are working with the World Resources Institute to develop satellite data and resource tracking data to analyze water and resources risk in different countries. Why? Because if they pick a country like Colombia or any of the above to bottle their beverages in, and if there's a water risk factor, that's putting their business at risk, right? So how can we look at weaving governance, sustainability into the governance commitment as well? When we look at how to roll out this commitment across a corporation, we look at building out a corporate sustainability strategy. And that looks very different for each company that we've worked with. I'm sure it looks very different for most of you in the room. But when you think about corporate sustainability, I'm using Patagonia, which is like the poster child for corporate sustainability as an example. Sometimes people focus solely on their internal operations, but others also focus on their external operations. So Patagonia here has sustainability mission and vision, but they also have environmental grants. So they're looking at how they can engage community groups, NGOs, and fund their efforts. They also look at employees. And a lot of the companies have realized that if they include an environmental commitment into their employee engagement programs, retention numbers go up. And a big talk these days is how do you attract and retain millennial and younger generations talent, right? One of the biggest ways of doing it is making sure that you're giving them the opportunity to align with their personal values in the workplace. They feel prouder of working long hours, of being there, of talking about their job when they realize that their job cares about the same things that they care about. It also means having policies and procurement guidelines. So certifications, whether you're a carbon neutral company, whether you have any of the ISO certifications or EMAS. Have you looked at your built environment footprint? So any of the green building certifications. And then also I like to say analyze your spend. So just like I mentioned the Olympics or events, you can put this lens over your spend. Everything that you spend money on, you can either choose to have impact or not. You can choose to buy local if it's available here from local providers. You can choose greener options on the catering outside. We noticed that they're going for compostable here. And then how do you implement? So when we look at how companies choose to implement, again, it shows up in many different ways. What one of our clients does, Nike, is they have committed to circular economy, and they chose to open source and create this circular design guide. And you'll see here, hopefully you can see, they're mapping out how this commitment to circular economy takes shape from their material selection to waste avoidance to disassembly. So picking materials so that you can, and putting it together in a way so that you can disassemble, recycle, repurpose. Versatility, durability, so that things last longer, packaging, and then new models. So they're looking at how can you even take the end of use items, crunch it up, or process it in a way that it can then become something new and fabulous again. Next is education and engagement. So following on to the employee engagement topic above, you not only have a duty to educate and engage your employees, but you also have the same responsibility to educate and engage your suppliers. I talked a little bit about Walmart and how they put out this survey to their 70,000 suppliers. That was the first step in their very long process of then educating and engaging their suppliers in the process. JetBlue is an example of really focusing on their employee engagement program. They call it Employee Engagement for Good. And you'll see there are a couple of examples of community connection. They have a way that their employees can donate their points. And then they've implemented a recycling program, both on board and then in their offices. Again, this is an example of an airline, and the airline industry really understands that they're under pressure right now. And so they're doing all that they can, not only to innovate on biofuels and ways to reduce their emissions from their core business, but on ways of making sure that their employees and stakeholders know that this is important to them. We also have seen really successful internal and external online training programs. So you can develop an environmental excellence training program for your employees. You can also do the same thing for all of your vendors and suppliers. So we have some clients that we work with where all of their suppliers have to take this online sustainability course before they can become a supplier. It's a great way to both onboard them and explain to them what your 2025, 2030 goals are, but it also tells them what they need to do to comply to your sustainability policies as well. Next up, number 7 is reporting. So you can't reduce what you don't measure, right? Like you have to have your baseline, you have to have your measurement down, and then you have to be able to set targets for reduction and targets for improvement. An annual sustainability report is a great way not only to see how you're doing and check on your efforts, but to share those efforts with your external community as well. There are some companies that have been doing this for a long time. They've been sharing their sustainability report online for many years. In other cases, I know several companies, 2019 was the first year that they pushed out an external sustainability report. So again, everyone is at a different step along this journey. The whole point though is that we're all taking steps forward. And then lastly, part of every ISO certification is this concept of reflection or continual improvement. So plan, do, check, act is what ISO calls it. We like to say improve, measure, report, analyze, test, and then improve again. So you want to make sure that you're always, your report or your strategy isn't stagnant. It's a living being, if you will, that needs to be checked on, needs to be infused some energy in every now and then so that you're constantly improving. In addition, like I mentioned, sustainability is still very young and very new. So there are new things coming online, new tools, new resources that you can implement every year. So Starbucks, I mentioned their commitment earlier about the straws. What they did when they realized they were getting a lot of heat about plastic straws is they realized that they didn't have the resources internally to design them out of this problem, right? So they said, let's outsource this. Let's look to the smartest and brightest minds out in the world. Let's create a prize and put a dollar amount to it and say whoever can come up with the best design that will design us out of straws for cold cups can win, and then we'll invest and build out that. And so they partnered with Closed Loop Partners, IDEO, and then some other brands that were in the same predicament. And that cup that I showed earlier, it's referred to as the adult sippy cup because it's kind of like a baby cup, but you don't need a straw, and that's what they've switched to all their cold cups, millions and millions of cold cups. So that is just a quick, I know we don't have a lot of time, a quick run through of the 8 steps of a corporate sustainability strategy. And what we're gonna do now is you'll see on the tables there are pink numbers, and we've numbered the groups based off of which stage you're at in the process. So if you're focused on the mission side of things and your leadership commitment, your mission statement, your organizational structure, you're in group 1. If you've moved on to strategy and implementation, you're group 2. If you're focused on your employees and the people side of things, you're group 3. And if you are really in the numbers and you're on the data side of things and reporting and continual improvement, you're group 4. If you are a complete rebel and you don't like being put in a box, you're group 5, which is what I call the wild card group, if you feel like you don't fit into one of these others. And what we're gonna do, I'll put this back up in a minute, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna move into these groups. There are several tables that are labeled group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, group 5. And what we're gonna do is get to know one another. Brief intros, your name and your organization, then go around the circle and share a little bit about your current efforts in that stage that you're at. Identify a few challenges or pain points. What's not working? What could you use some resources or a little bit of help on? And then brainstorm ideas about possible solutions, or potentially it could be a resource that within Festa we could develop. And then there will be a report out. So at the end, each group will select one spokesperson that can present their top solution, and this is the key, in 30 seconds or less. So that's the assignment. I'm going to put back the groups up, and then feel free to move around.